Okay, going to call a special meeting of council to order for Friday, May 15th. Before approval of the agenda, I'd like to try adding an item, so if council would hopefully support it, but adding irrigation on the soccer field for TR. And get a seconder. Councillor Noxana, discussion. So this is something that's come last minute. There is, Ms. Scottabell had talked to it. Looking at, they have a quote, so we're kind of looking to kind of set some funds aside for it in case the province or the federal government won't pay for that part of the upgrade to the field. Ms. Scott has not had an opportunity yet to submit that to the province with the new quote that we received. So, any other discussion? Call the question on the motion to add it. All in favor? Carried.
Favor.
Thanks. Take approval of the amended agenda. Councillor Noxana.
That the May 15th, 2026 special council meeting agenda be adopted as amended.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury. All in favor? Carried. Delegations, KPMG, Corey, engagement partner to present to the District of Tumbler Ridge 2025 audited financial statements. Corey, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Kind of sneaking this in right in the nick of time. I've got a few documents to take us through. Because this is my first time here, I thought I'd do a time check in terms of how kind of which version people would like to see in terms of audit findings and financial statement presentation. Like, is 30 minutes too much, or is would be the right amount?
15. If we can keep it around the 15 to 20 minute mark, would be great.
15 to 20? Okay. Yeah. I can do that. Okay, that's why I like to start that way. So I'm gonna share my screen and take us through the 15 minute presentation version. Okay. So where I'd like to just start is just with a quick review of our audit findings report. So essentially, this report's presented to you as council members to kind of discharge your responsibility in overseeing the audit process, and also for us to communicate the findings from our audit. So it would contain any significant findings that we need to communicate with you coming out of the audit process. So it has our contact information here, and I'm really, what I'll focus in on are just some of the key highlights that came as a result of the audit this year. So it was our first year kind of back doing the audit for the District of Tumbler Ridge. And the status, so this is the last day for you to report your audited financial statements, but we are through kind of no light effort of our team and the finance team at the district in a position to release the financial statements once they get approved by council. So that's good. We do anticipate issuing a clean audit opinion, which means we were able to kind of see everything we needed, and we believe the financial statements are a fair representation of the results. So in terms of other items, I will go through this quite quickly. So we talked about the status, the materiality level. So the materiality level for those that kind of want to know a little bit about auditing, it basically is a level that we set, and we design our audit to make sure there's no errors that are greater than the materiality level. So it was set at $553,000. You know, it's our belief that that's kind of the level at which errors below that level, they wouldn't make a difference to kind of the way the users read the financial statements and the decisions that they're making on the financial statements. So obviously, the lower this is, the more work we have to do. The higher it is, we can you know, our sample sizes go down a little bit, and that's done. There's kind of some benchmarks and some standards that we use, and then we also just look at, you know, how heavily used are the district's financial statements. So, you know, they're not they're not, TELUS stock financial statements, so they're not really heavily used, but there are users of these financial statements. So we take all that into consideration when we're setting this level. So it was our initial audit. So we did have to go and review the working papers of the previous auditor. So we completed that, and no issues were noted. And then through the audit, we do focus in on the risks, and because I'm just going to keep this brief, we do respond to the risk that management's in a position to override controls and essentially post journal entries that would move the financial statements in one way or the other. We did our testing on that, and there were no issues that were noted. Also, at this time, I'd just like to ask council if you are aware of any fraud or illegal acts. Every time I meet with council, I do have to ask this question, and if there are any, I'd like you just to speak up and let me know.
I know I emailed, there was a questionnaire that I had emailed.
Yeah,
There's one there that I can't speak about.
perfect. Okay, and then in terms of the other areas where we focused our audit, so we did look at kind of the cash equivalents and the investment balances. There were some findings throughout the audit, all of which are immaterial, and there's a page at the end where we kind of summarize all of those in one place. So we'll kind of talk to that later on. But really, we are in a position where we feel we've addressed the risks, and anything that's left uncorrected is not material to the financial statements as they're presented. So I won't talk to these in detail. Yeah, so I think just going into kind of some of the control observations, and we've discussed these with Justin. I know it's his first year there, and some of this is just kind of things that we'll continue to work on together as kind of auditors and him in his new role. But just some of the findings. So one of the findings was just with respect to those journal entries, we do want to kind of get some just some documentation around the review and approval of the journal entries when they're posted, because that was missing throughout the year on some of the ones that we tested. Also, the Tumbler Ridge Public Library, it is controlled by the district, and therefore it should be consolidated into the financial statements. It's not material to the operations, so we left it this year, but we'll work on getting that consolidated into the financial position and operations next year. Also, just the amortization policy isn't 100% in accordance with the public sector accounting standards, and we'll just fix that policy moving forward. And again, it's something that kind of just creates small errors every year, but could be just tidied up as we move forward. The next one here is just with the trust accounts. So the trust accounts aren't supposed to be consolidated or presented within the balances of the financial statements. They are small trusts, the Alaska Challenge Trust and the cemetery funds. So again, it's not material, but we do need to get those removed in the future. And then this next one is the accrued interest. So just putting together a reconciliation at the end of the year to ensure that the investment income is picked up properly at the end of the year. And then the cutoff of payroll liability. So again, we did note that there was some accruals that need to be made and some adjustments that need to be made around making sure significant expenses were accrued appropriately at the end of the year. So any questions just on the audit process? Because I think what's kind of maybe more pressing is to go through the financial statement presentation.
Yeah, council? Can you just explain a little bit more in the library in regards to how we didn't make it in this year, but we're looking at doing it next year?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, any municipality that kind of exerts kind of control over its municipal libraries, that control, the fact that it's controlled, all of the assets and the operations of the library should essentially be consolidated with the operations and the assets of the district. Obviously, the library is a much smaller entity. And so when we looked at it and we looked at kind of the balances that would be brought into the district, it's not going to make a material difference to what you're about to see in the financial statements. But the requirements of the accounting standards are that would be consolidated together and presented kind of as one because of the control. And then any transactions between the two entities would essentially get eliminated on consolidation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll take us through this financial statement presentation, and essentially we've put this presentation together, and it's a similar presentation that we do for other municipalities, and it's intended to be, a direct reflection of the financial statements themselves. We take all of the figures out of the financial statements and just put it together in this presentation format to make it a little bit easier for us to go through these balances. So as I mentioned, we'll talk about the auditor's report. We do anticipate issuing a clean audit report once you approve the financial statements. Tamara and Justin will get that finalized so that you can get it submitted in time. The financial statements are in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which is what municipalities are required to report under. So looking at the balances, so your financial statements, they all start with the statement of financial position, which shows the financial assets and the financial liabilities and the non-financial assets of the district. And these are presented as of December 31st. And it really starts with the financial assets. So those are the assets, they're like cash, or they'll eventually get settled in some form of cash. So total financial assets, you can see, grew this year from $48.8 million at the end of last year to $55.1 million at the end of this year. The balances that saw the growth were essentially all of the balances. So the cash and cash equivalents grew by just under $3 million to $15.1 million. The amounts that were receivable for accounts receivable were $1.3 million from $727,000. There's $33.4 million invested, and the investment in the Tumbler Ridge Community Forest, which essentially picks up the income on an annual basis and consolidates it on one line, that grew from $3.8 million to $5.1 million. So moving on, the statement of financial position then presents the financial liabilities. So these are the amounts that are essentially owing as of the end of the year. So the financial liabilities, they also grew. So there's $3.9 million owing at the end of the year compared to $3 million at the end of the previous year. So within the accounts payable and accrued liabilities balance, that was $1.8 million. So there's some trade payables. There are also some amounts that were held aside at the end of the year due to some tax sales, some deferred revenue. So the deferred revenue represents grants that would be received, but the programs have yet to be delivered. So the revenue is being essentially carried forward until the future years when those programs can be delivered. That balance was $274,000. There were deposits and holdbacks of $229,000. And then asset retirement obligations of $1.5 million, which represents kind of the commitment or the legal obligation of the district to remediate assets at the end of their useful life. So when we subtract the financial liabilities from the financial assets, so we end up with this net financial assets figure. So that's the $51.1 million, which is an increase year over year from $45.8 million. So on the bottom of the statement of financial position, so on your financial statements, you have the non-financial assets. So these are different in that they're held by the district really to provide services to the citizens. So the biggest balance and really making up the vast majority of this is the physical assets or the tangible capital assets of the district. So they were $55 million at the end of the year, an increase from $49 million in the previous year. So there was significant investment in that tangible capital asset balance that outweighed the depreciation or amortization that was charged against it. And we'll see the balances of those tangible capital assets on a further slide. There's also a small amounts of inventory and prepaid services that'll be delivered or used in the 2026 year. Next, we look at the statement of operations. So first, it was the statement of financial position, which is essentially that snapshot as of December 31st. And then the operations are really showing, what came in and what went out throughout the year from January to December. So there are three columns. There's the budgeted amounts are on the left there. In the middle are the actual results for 2025. And on the right is the comparative results for the previous year. So we can see there was budgeted revenue of $29 million, actual revenue of $27 million brought in, compared to revenues in the previous year of just under $20 million. So a substantial increase, and we'll see on future slides that increase coming mostly from additional taxation revenue. With respect to the expenses, so the expenses increased from $16.3 million in the previous year to $16.7 million in the current year, but that was less than what was budgeted at just under $19 million in the budget. So you take the revenues less the expenses for the year, and there is an annual surplus of $10.6 million experienced. That took the annual surplus, which is the surpluses over the complete history of the district, started at $96.1 million and ended the year at $106.7 million. The next statement on the financial statements is a statement of changes in net financial assets. And why I like to present this slide is essentially it shows that at districts like Tumbler Ridge, you need to experience annual surpluses so that you can continue to invest in the capital of the district. So there's an annual surplus in the year of $10.6 million, but a big portion of that surplus was actually invested from financial assets into those non-financial assets, or those service delivering assets. So that net investment was $5.2 million for the year. So even though there was a $10 million surplus, the financial assets of the district only grew from $45.8 million to $51.2 million. So taking just a quick look into some of those balances, when we do look at the revenues for 2025, this just shows the breakdown of where those revenues are coming from. So the vast majority of the revenues for 2025 coming from net taxation revenue, and we'll see a comparative to the previous year on the next slide, but taxation revenue really increased by about $7 million from some of those properties that went from care and maintenance to back to being taxable and generating additional taxation revenue for the district. The other larger items that you see within this pie are similar to other municipalities. The government transfers at $3.7 million, and the sale of services and water and sewer at $1.3 and $1.1 million. The increase in the Tumbler Ridge Community Forest, so that sits within that entity, and it's picked up through the revenue line of the district on a one-line basis. So that's really the net income of that company that's held by the district. So as I said, just comparing it to last year, you can see in the previous year, the piece of pie that was related to taxation revenue was quite a bit smaller at $10.7 million. So good kind of increase there. And then the government transfers, looks bigger, but it was a similar balance at $3.2 million, and the sale of services and water and sewer also similar balances at 1.5 and just over $1 million for water and sewer. There was also the equity pickup in the previous year from the Tumbler Ridge Community Forest. So moving to kind of comparing expenses year over year. So this just shows by function, how the expenses have changed. So the lighter blue is the current year, and the darker blue is the previous year. So you can see really the makeup of the expenses is similar year over year, with kind of moderate inflationary increases across most of these expense line items. I did say we'd kind of dive into the tangible capital asset balance. So this is what makes up that $55 million. And there was actually quite a bit of construction in progress at the end of the year. So that saw really the biggest increase, as there was a number of road projects and different infrastructure projects that were underway at the end of the year. And once those are completed, they get moved into the various categories to which they relate, and then they get depreciated into expenses over their useful lives. So looking at the accumulated surplus, so it's important to understand that although there's an accumulated surplus of $106.7 million, that the vast majority of that, or over half of that, is invested in those tangible capital assets. So it's not really available for operations. And then there are also reserves that have been set aside of $28.4 million. And that really leaves that operating surplus of $24.7 million. So good to see the operating surplus continuing to increase, but just understanding that the accumulated surplus overall is made up of these three different elements, and it's not all available for operations. And then this slide just shows a little bit of a summary from the balances in the reserve funds. So I won't go through this in too much detail. So there was some use of the Growing Communities Fund that went from $1.6 million to $1.3 million. Otherwise, there were some increases reflected here on these slides, likely just due to investment returns. There's also use of the Peace River Agreement funds, went from $2.8 to $1.9 million, and the RFFE asphalt funds from 5.2 to 2.9, and then a large increase in the stabilization reserve that was set aside that went from $4.5 million to $10.3 million at the end of the year. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen so I can make you a little bit bigger, and happy to take questions.
Yeah, thanks very much. Questions from council? Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question in regards to the statement of operations and accumulated surplus. We had a $10 million annual surplus. Can you explain that a little more detail? And you said in your presentation that we just collected more tax revenue than anticipated. Yeah, can you just go in a little more detail there?
Quinton.
Yeah, I can go into detail. So it was anticipated. So the budgeted surplus was actually $10 million. So the increase in taxation revenue this year was related to an additional $7 million that was being collected due to kind of those I believe it's mining properties that came out of care and maintenance. So it was anticipated in the budget, and the budgeted surplus for the year also was $10 million. And then I think what's important to understand is that surplus, there was quite a big investment that was made of the annual surplus into those non-financial assets, as there was quite a bit of capital spend throughout the year, which is what you generate surplus to kind of provide those services and infrastructure projects.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the detail you wanted, but
Yeah, you hit on it a little bit. We had increase from other tax bases there. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right, well, thanks very much, Corey, for your presentation and going through your audit.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the help from the finance staff there. I know it was a bit of a scramble with lots of distracting things going on in the community, and I wish you guys all the best in the future.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Okay, moving on to new business, 4.1, 2025 audited financial statements, report dated May 15, 2026, from the Director of Finance regarding the 2025 audited financial statements. Recommendation, Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor, that the 2025 audited financial statements be approved as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Hoffman. Discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Okay, added item was 4.2, and that was the irrigation for the TR soccer field. Ms. Scott, I know no report in front of council. This came last minute this afternoon, and I just thought it was an opportunity that we should have a discussion about it.
Sure, I can give council a little bit of background there. When the Ministry of Education was looking for somewhere to put the portable units, we had discussed with them the ability to use that soccer field, and they had promised that they would return the soccer field to a better than original condition when they were done. And so those portables are moved off, and they're starting to do work on the remediation of that soccer field. But there's been a little bit of discussion about what exactly that remediation looks like. So they have absolutely committed that it will be better than it was before. But the conversation was they will scrape off the gravel, the salt, everything that's there. They're going to bring in a whole bunch of new topsoil. But then the option is they could sod it, or they can put in irrigation and then hydroseed. And so the intent behind the sod was that it could make the field ready for use sooner than if they hydroseeded. However, whichever option they go with, the field will not be ready for the soccer season. And so I had a conversation with the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure about putting in the irrigation as well as the sod. And she had indicated the cost of the sod was very significant. And so they would consider the irrigation, but if we did the irrigation, it would be with soil and hydroseed then instead of the sod. But that was based on the original quote that we got for irrigation over a year ago, which looked like a cost of about $78,000 plus electrical. And we have since got an updated quote that is approximately half of that. So I haven't had a chance to have a further conversation with the Deputy Minister with his new updated quotes, because now that the irrigation is significantly less than what we had originally anticipated, I don't want to speak for them, there may potentially be room in their budget to do both sod and irrigation, or they still may say, no, you can have irrigation, soil, and hydroseed, and that would be our choice to make. But regardless, in order to maintain that soccer field in the level that we want to, it should have irrigation. So if we choose for them to do the sod, I'm hoping council will still have a conversation about whether then, even though we just passed the budget, whether council may consider doing a budget amendment to include fees for putting the irrigation in ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this was a conversation I had when I was down in Victoria as well, and that's where it all started. When they talked about making the soccer pitch better than it was when they had to put the stage 1 trailers there, I did mention in regards to how all summer long we have staff that has to go and pull sprinklers and hoses, make sure we're watering it. So to me, I think this was an opportunity, and I know I understand Ms. Scott's first comments that we had a cost, obviously. From government side, it seemed like it might blow what they had planned to spend to bring that field back to the soccer pitch that can be used. And I think now with the opportunity that it's actually come in lower, again, I can't speak for the government, but she hasn't had an opportunity to send it back to them. I also think there may be an opportunity to also flush it out with federal, but in the meantime, I'm looking to see if maybe council will support some, I used unbudgeted funds, but whatever Ms. Scott can help with that motion. give staff money so they can get the stuff coming in case, you know, government says no and federal says no, but council wants to support that. To me, I think, I don't know, I mean, again, we're flushing this out last minute, so staff wouldn't have the information, like what do we spend in labor in a full summer doing all that? And how long is irrigation gonna last? I think the irrigation at the golf course has been there since it was built. Sure, with some repairs, but I think there's a, you know, there's a life expectancy that over time, I think when you look about labor, 2 guys or 3 people showing up to haul the hoses and the sprinklers and having to go shut them off and move them, and I think this just, to me, it makes sense. If they're ripping it up now, it's an opportunity to make the field the best we can for the youth and the children and the adults that play on it, and I think it's a longevity of that field. I think it's better upkeep. Ms. Scott, what would, just before I go to Councillor Noxana, what motion would it be better? Unbudgeted funds from surplus, or did you have another one?
Budget amendment.
Budget amendment, thanks. Councillor Noxana?
Thank you. My question was around what fund could we potentially tap into to use this? If it is coming from our budget, and I know that's a maybe right now, do we have enough in our surplus? Do we have things like the gas tax fund eligible for this, or growing communities fund eligible for this? What are some options that isn't taxation at this point?
Ms. Scott, it wouldn't be taxation.
There's definitely room in surplus. I believe we anticipate at the end of this year using all of the Growing Communities Fund. I don't know what's left in the other funds off the top of my head, but there is surplus.
Any other discussion from council? Okay, I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we use unbudgeted, a budget amendment for $50K from surplus for, to give to staff for irrigation if provincial or federal government won't support it. Seconder, Councillor Hoffman, discussion? Call the question, all in favor? I'm going to say carried. Take adjournment, please. Oh, sorry, any emailed in questions, Ms. Scott, my apologies.
No.
Thank you. Take adjournment, Councillor Norberry.
Thank you, Mayor, that the May 15th, 2026 special council meeting be adjourned.
Seconder, Councillor Hoffman, all in favor? Carried.